We're here with NobleProg Trainer Dr. Lawrenson, and we're going to talk about culture. So, Anthony, when we talk about an organisation's culture, what is it we are really referring to?
Okay, so an organisational culture is probably best described as like a personality of that organisation. It refers to the values and attitudes which pervade within that organisation, which influence and affect the way people think, the way they make decisions, and the way that they interrelate to each other.
And what is a good or an effective culture, and how would we recognise it?
I suppose a good or effective culture is one that constantly strives to improve in whatever that organisation's purpose is. There are various grades, if you like, used by some academics. They run from 1 through to 5. So if we start off at the bottom, there's a type of culture sometimes referred to as pathological, which is, as you can probably assume by the sound of it, is pretty dysfunctional. That organisation dismisses any critique, any progressive ideas that challenge the way it sees the world. There's plenty of examples out there in the media. You don't have to dig too far to look at crashed aircraft or burning oil rigs or failed financial institutions to see the outcome of what that type of culture can result in. Moving up the scale from there, there's a type of culture that's referred to as reactive. So it does good things, or tries to, but perhaps not authentically. It does it as a reaction, a knee-jerk reaction sometimes to a failing situation. In the middle, calculative is the next label, where an organisation might decide whether it adheres to regulatory constraints based on cost-benefit analysis. So it can break the law sometimes or break its own rules if there's a perceived short-term advantage. Then we move to organisations that are a little bit more proactive, and they are starting to move in the right direction now. They are choosing certain areas which they recognise that they can improve in and making strides towards that. But right at the top of the tree, where you perhaps really want to be, is this idea of generative. And a generative culture uses expertise within the company, its own history and knowledge and memory to get better. But it doesn't just look within its own organisation, it looks at others for opportunities to learn and get better. We'd all like to work within and for generative companies and generative organisations. But the ironic side of that, the paradox is, they very often feel uncomfortable, particularly in safety critical industries, because they're always looking over the shoulder.
And what does an organisation's culture have to do with any conversation around their skills development needs?
Yeah, well, culture's very, very powerful, but also very subtle. It gets under the skin of people and starts to direct the way that they think, the way that they interrelate within organisations. So particularly from a senior management perspective, if there is no understanding or a misunderstanding of what the organisation's culture is, that can the culture can start to manage the people within that organisation rather than the other way around.
And how can an organisation achieve that generative level of a culture?
Yeah, it's not a short-term solution. It's a road to sort of point your organisation in the right direction. But fundamentally, what you need to establish is this form of sometimes referred to as psychological safety or just culture, where people feel comfortable about making suggestions and about applying criticism where appropriate, and knowing that is listened to and that is seen as valuable information to allow the organisation to move forward and improve.
Excellent. Dr. Lawrenson, thank you very much.
No, thank you.